Okay, I'd like to, yeah. On behalf of the both congregations and congregations, I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome all of you here tonight. It's very nice to see. We have a wonderful crowd here tonight, and I'm very pleased to see that. As you might all expect, it takes a tremendous amount of work to put together an event of this magnitude with numerous details that a lot of people need to be involved in. And if you'll please indulge me, I'd like to just read a list of people that I know helped on this list, on this event. I'm very hopeful that I'm not leaving anybody out, but please indulge me for one moment. The people that I'd like to acknowledge are Rabbis Levy, Rabbi Benzakan, Isaac Maimon, Judy Balin, Barry Gorin, Steve Yonker, Frank Barron, Isaac Azos, Cecilia Benzakan, Elaine Korn, Sarah Ben Ezra, David Israel, Salvo Bihar, Rob Schoenfeld, who is our next state representative in this district, at least I hope so, Philip Anderson, Dave Azos, Josh Basson, Alice Basson, Albert Bihar, Steve Hemmett, Elazar Bihar, Tony Granillo, Cindy Dam, and David Ordell. It's a long list. I hope I got everybody. If I didn't, please forgive me. But a lot of people there. There's another person who I feel very strongly needs to be thanked publicly, and that is the person who is actually preparing all the food for this. It's not just one person, but the thanks I'd like to give to Lily Azos and all of her helpers who Really, I'm sure she's done a fantastic job. I've been in constant contact with Lily. Thank you very much, Lily, and to all your helpers also. I also would be very remiss at this point if I didn't acknowledge the generous gift that was given from Jack and Becky Bessaroth. That's a good name for that. And Jack and Becky, I want to thank you for your gift. This gift helps to facilitate being able to bring out our special guest, the Honorable Yitzhak Navon. And for that, we thank you very much. I'd also like to acknowledge the David H. Al-Hadif Institute for Adult Education, whose continued support has enabled us to provide many programs of this sort, all of which have been a benefit to the community at large. Thank you to that organization. I'd like to now welcome up to the podium Rabbi Levy once again, who will lead us in Hamotzi, and there will be a wash station that will be located near the kitchen. Thank you very much, and welcome.
כאמור פותח את ידיך ומשביח הרצון, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם מוצילך מן הארץ. אמן. Friends, if I may, I want to take a moment to welcome all of you here tonight and share with you in this very exciting event, both for the World Sephardic community, looking back on their history, and for us as a community, a modest community here in Seattle, with the presence of the esteemed Honorable Yitzhak Navon. If I may, I want to share a little bit of my enthusiasm with the things that are taking place in our community, and the success of these kinds of programs are thanks to all of you, the participants, those that are eager to learn and share an experience in these kinds of things. But a strong Chazak u'Baruch goes to those that support these events, these programs, these outreach activities. And for tonight, I want to again congratulate and thank Jack and Becky Ben-Aroya, who unfortunately could not be here tonight. They're in Europe at the President's Council of the Jewish Agency. Jack and Becky send their warmest regards to all of you, and very special and warm regards to the Honorable Yitzhak Navon. I also want to give a Chazak u'Baruch to those who support the David H. Hadif Institute for Adult Education, and in particular Victor and Susie Al-Hadif, who do so much for the community and here are so involved with the education of the adult community, and a Chazak u'Baruch to them. Thank you very much. It's an honor to have with us the esteemed Rabbi Maimon, who's sitting with us at the head table, the esteemed Rabbi Greenberg, who's with us at the head table as well. Rabbi Ben-Zakane and Mrs. Ben-Zakane will be here shortly. Rabbi Ben-Zakane was in Alaska today, and he will be here in a little while. I hope you're enjoying the Mediterranean, Middle Eastern foods that we prepared, that have been prepared for tonight. And I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you for coming.
Good evening. The children of the entire community joined together to create a gift that they wanted to present to Mr. Navon. And some of the children who worked on it are here tonight to make a presentation.
Okay, Mr. Navon wants to comment on the gift.
I'm not commenting. Come on, sit down. Thank you. First of all, תודה רבה. את מורה שלנו? מורה
Vic.
What I see, I don't know if you can see, you will see it later, we put it there to be exhibited. I see here, first of all, things that are written. Then I see here the painting of Rambam, which is considered to be Maimonides. And another Rabbi Vizier of the Turkish Empire, and some ladies around. I won't tell you who they are because I don't know. Do you know? No, okay. But you like them, okay. Then there is a Bet HaKnesset, a synagogue, trees with fruits, and lots of leaves of silver and gold. Just like the hands who did it. Thank you.
The dedication in the back reads as follows. To Honorable Yitzhak Navon, thank you for being an inspiration to us from the children of the Sephardic community in Seattle, Washington.
It'll be in the foyer by the office, and we can look at it if you'd like.
Some will give the interpretation to you. Anyone who likes it may take it. That's not
No, I'm going up north. I can do it here, that's fine. Your Excellency, President Navon, rabbis and guests, I believe you are in for a special treat this evening. Arkady Izrailov, his wife and children, were the first Russian family sponsored by Congregation Ezra Bessaroth. They left everything they had in the city of Tashkent to come to what must have been for them an incredibly difficult environment. A strange country, a strange city, and a language that must have been very foreign to them. But with unbridled energy, he, his family, have thrown themselves wholeheartedly into the task of learning a new language and adapting themselves to a new lifestyle, and they have succeeded admirably. In the short period of time that they have been in Seattle, Arkady, Rosa, and the children have endeared themselves to all of us here at Congregation Ezra Bessaroth and to the Seattle Jewish community in general. When he came here, we had no idea how talented he was musically. I have had a few opportunities to listen to him, and I've enjoyed each and every opportunity and occasion immensely. He has prepared a varied musical selection for you this evening, one I'm sure you'll enjoy, but I'm going to let him introduce his musical selections himself. Ladies and gentlemen, Arkady Israelov.
Cuando te parlo y te quedó corazón me perdió amor sin dolor, corazón me perdió amor sin adiós querida, te quiero la vida, amargaste tú. Adiós querida, te quiero la vida, amargaste tú. Otro amor, amar a los que por mí sos verdad, que por mí sos verdad. Adiós, adiós querida, no quiero la vida, amargaste tú. Adiós, adiós querida, no quiero la vida, amargaste tú. chica, de ahí será chica, le declaro el amor. De ahí será chica, le declaro el amor. Pasará per madura, figura, acércate a mi lado, te helado. Acércate a mi lado, te helado. Только я остаюсь. И за солнцем мечтаю к нему, хотя я ж расставаться боюсь. Оторвите меня от земли, журавли, в солнечном свете вам так легко плывется, вам так легко поется, вам так легко смеется. Птицы курлычат, птицы дорогу кличат, мне постоянно снятся крылья, чтоб к вам подняться, журавли. Что ж, журавли, летите туда, где теплее, светлее, не забудьте меня. Здесь холода и тревоги становятся злее и злее, просто день ото дня. Оторвите меня от земли, журавли, в солнечном свете вам так легко смеется, вам так легко поется, вам так легко смеется. Птицы курлычат, птицы дорогу кличат, мне постоянно снятся крылья, чтоб к вам подняться, журавли. Улетели снова тьма, небо на сердце. Складай тревоги становятся злее. Просто день ото дня. Оторвите меня от земли, журавли. В солнечном свете нам так легко плывется, нам так легко поется, нам так легко смеется. Птицы курлычат, птицы дорогу кричат, мне постоянно снятся крылья, чтоб вам подняться, журавли.
Excuse me, just 1 minute, Victor, if you don't mind. I'd like to say that Arkady came over to my house on Sunday. I asked him what kind of a program he was prepared to put on. He really wasn't too sure. And I said, for the type of crowd that we have at the Ezra Bessaroth, we've got to learn some of our Ladino romances. He learned them Sunday, and I gave him a copy of the words, and I think he's done a fantastic job.
Honored rabbis, Lisa, not Rebbetzin, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an honor to have with us this evening Yitzhak Navon. Before President Navon presents to us his remarks, I'd like to give you a brief background and introduction to our most honored speaker this evening. Yitzhak Navon is a former Israel president, and he's presently a Labor Party member of the Knesset, and he was born in Jerusalem in April 9, 1921. And he comes from a long family of Sephardim in Israel, and I believe he was not only the first, but the only Sephardic president of Israel. He studied in religious school as a child and went on to study secondary school near the Hebrew University. At the Hebrew University, he studied Hebrew literature, Arabic, Islamic culture, and pedagogy. His first professional employment was a teacher at night school for working youth at the Bet Hakerim High School. However, he was diverted from teaching to public life when in 1946, year I was born, he was asked to direct the Arabic department of the Haganah, the Jewish Defense Forces. After serving in the Haganah, he continued in this position until the end of the War of Independence, where he served as a captain during the War of Independence. Following the establishment of the State of Israel, Mr. Navon was sent to Uruguay and Argentina to serve as second secretary to the Israeli consulate. Upon his return to Israel in 1951, he was appointed political secretary to the foreign minister, and late in 1952, he became director of Prime Minister Ben-Gurion's office. He served in this capacity until 1963, when Ben-Gurion resigned from the premiership. And I just might point out as an aside that maybe after the dinner, there may be an opportunity to ask some questions on what is going on in Israel. And we had the very personal opportunity of getting to ask some questions this evening, and I think you'll find his views on this matter quite interesting as well. From 63 through 65, Mr. Navon was a director of Culture Department of the Ministry of Education and Culture, directing the literacy campaign. He mobilized hundreds of women soldiers to teach Hebrew to adults in villages and development towns. Resigning from civil service in 65, he was elected to the Knesset as a member of Rafi, David Ben-Gurion's newly formed party. During his Knesset years, Mr. Navon served as a deputy speaker for 7 years and chairman of the Defense and Foreign Affairs Committee for 4 years. President Navon has served as the chairman of the World Zionist Council, the American Israel Cultural Fund, and the Neot Keduim Society, a network of biblical and Talmudic gardens. Mr. Navon served as president of the State of Israel from 1978 through 1983. In September 1984, he was appointed Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Education and Culture. He is presently the Honorary World Chairman of Sephardi 92. He is a Rodizli, and it is our pleasure. That was you're not going to take that? That was handed to me. Okay, he's going to take that note back. He'll tell you what he is.
Honorary Rodizli está bueno.
Yeah, he said Honorary Rodizli está bueno. President Navon.
כבוד הרבנים, מוריי ורבותיי, hermanas y hermanos, ערב טוב לכם. I was born when I was in Cape Town and Johannesburg. I've just been there. And you would believe that all the Jewish community in South Africa are Rodizlis. Baruch Hashem, 1,500 and so, but La Baranake hasn't. You have a feeling it is like the Jews in the world, that's the Rodizlis among the Jews. The entire world thinks we are at least 200-300 million Jews, you know. One would think that behind Rodizlis there are what, tens of hundreds of thousands. Let's keep the secret, the real one, entre nous. Once, remember a story that Arafat, leader of the terrorists, went to China, to Mao Zedong, to ask for help. These Israelis, he said, they are attacking us, and will you please help us? So we said, how many are those Israelis? It was years ago. He said, well, 3 million. Oh yes? In which hotel are they? para los chinos. I bring you greetings. Greetings, first of all, Yerushalayim HaKodesh. Yerushalayim says that she is like a mother that is waiting for her children to come to her. So I bring her greetings from you. What I'll tell her, I don't know. I only tell her that I find nice kids, warm and hospitable people, and I hope that one day they will come to see their mother. There is only one mother, and Israel is our moledet, our country, it's our land. And although even when one sees that his mother has some gray hair and some wrinkles, not always hears exactly what you say, but you can't change it, it's yours. And you love it in spite of the difficulties. That's how I feel anyhow. Now I understand that we have here at least three communities. One is the Rodazlis, otro de los Turcanos, and the third, our friends and brothers, the Ashkenazim, or those who are not either Turcanos or Rodazlis. So I say wholeheartedly shalom to all of you. By the way, speaking about Sefarad 92, a year ago I was in Turkey. You know that the Turks are making the whole issue of this because they said Spain expelled the Jews, we received them. And we are the people who have to remember the good, the bad. That's the typical thing of the Jewish people, memory. We have to memorize everything. That's what gives us, long history, and the longer our history is in the past, so our destiny is long in the future. And they spoke about their attitude towards the Jews in those days, but I found that Turkish Sephardi Jews from different communities that I met, whether Los Angeles or even in Italy, in other places, are really grateful for what was a home that was given to the Jews who were expelled from Sepharad, and for this we are grateful. I am sorry to tell you that the Jewish community there in Turkey is not, how shall I say, they are forgetting their Ladino. Ya no hay con quien hablar. You speak with one, te responde en francés. No caiga mal. And all the Turkish or anything. But in Israel you have, you have a large Jewish Turkish community, and they keep the only theater in Ladino that exists in Israel. And lately, a couple of months ago, I saw a beautiful play they put on stage, La Novia de las Siete Postanelas. Very nice comedy. By the way, there are rabbis there, hay un rabino ahí que hace las bodas, y hay bodas y hay a la revés de las bodas también. Hay de todo lo bueno. And Rhodes, sometimes the Jews of Turkey were lucky that during the Second World War they were saved. They were in real danger. Thank God they were saved. Not so in Rhodes, and sometimes you think a small island, a small community with real tragedies on the Jewish community, and it has such a name, especially because it was for a long time a center of Judaic studies, the Midrash, Rabbanim. They wanted this, they would be sent to Rhodes. It had the great days. And those are scattered. I see there is much solidarity among them. So I bring you greetings from they asked me really to bring greetings to the Zlis of South Africa. In Ashkelon, there is a concentration and Ashdod, the concentration of Rodazlis. They wanted to organize international convention of Rodazlis in Israel this year. And I said, as chairman of the National Jewish Committee of this, I said, I'll be very glad to help you, but you organize it, I can't organize it. And they started to, I don't know where it stands now. Another word that before we deal with the problem, with the main topic, I was asked by some people where I come from, and now I hear that, I'll tell you, it's not a secret. My father, I was born in Jerusalem, and so was my father, and forefathers. This year we complete 333, exactly this year, since the day they came to Yerushalayim from Istanbul. And all the years they kept living in Jerusalem, and they kept speaking Judaismo, Espanol. They call it Ladino, not we. We Jews, Sephardim, never call it Ladino. We call it Judaismo, or Judeo-Espanol, or Spaniol. Ladino was the name given by scholars, as a matter of fact, to the translation of the Bible into Ladino, the literally Jewish Spanish. But we use the word Judaismo, or Spaniol. My mother was born in Morocco, and her father was a rabbi in Azimur. It's a town not far away from Azagan or Casablanca on the west coast. And one night, her father was a rabbi of Yaakov ben Atar. He had a dream that Eliyahu Navi comes to him and says, how long will you live here in comfort while Jerusalem is in anguish? It took him 4 days until he took his wife, that's my grandmother, and his small daughter of 4 years, which was my mother, Miriam, and they came to Yerushalayim. That was 110 years ago. And that's the story. And this story I told when I was in Egypt as president, invited by President Sadat for an official visit of 5 days that I was there with my wife. Among other things, I spoke before the members of parliament, the Egyptian members of parliament. Luckily, my subjects of study at the university were Islam and Arabic, so I could speak to them in Arabic, which facilitated very much the contact with them. And I told them this story to show that we are not a foreign element as they claim, the Arabs. The Jews are foreign elements. Well, what they've got to do with this region, with the land of Israel, with Jerusalem? They come from far away, what they've got to do? So I started to explain what they have to do. I told them this story, and then that the parents of my wife, who came from Russia, were prisoners in Russia because they were Zionists. And then I ended saying, it was the will of God to take us away from our land, and it was the will of God to bring us back. That's to say, you should understand it's the will of God, so you better don't interfere. That's on the personal side. Now let us come to the main topic. I wish I could speak about the situation in Israel today. It will take too long for that. We can't combine two subjects at a time. Only in short to tell you that I think, maybe I'm not objective, and I know that here, as in Israel, there are people who have different opinions, and it's legitimate. When I speak, I have my personal opinion. You know, I'm a member of the Labour Party, and I was very glad that there was a change in the government in Israel. I think there is a new chance of progressing towards peace, and I think that immense resources they went, according to our view, to unnecessary projects will be now directed for education, welfare and infrastructure, and the main important thing will be a real progress towards peace. It won't be easy, there are obstacles, it's difficult, but there is a new breeze, new perspectives, and the entire world has changed his attitude toward Israel in practical ways. Let alone not to speak about the guarantees of the United States that gave us for loans of $10 billion. Rabin today is going to Germany, maybe there too he will get guarantees for loans. And we are getting, I think, also military aid more now, and political attitude from different parts of the world, and especially in the Arab world too, there is a change. We should also take into consideration objective reasons, for example, the fact that the Soviet Union is no more a superpower. And they always they backed Syria, they backed the extremist elements among the Arabs. Now she's not doing it anymore, and Syria cannot expect, in case of emergency, that Russia will come to their help and bring them armaments and money, etc. Maybe this too is one of the reasons they were prepared to negotiate. It will take time. It won't be easy. There will be ups and downs, but I'm optimistic. I think we are now on the verge of a new chapter in the life of the State of Israel. What we have to do is to invest money on projects to find jobs, work for the new Olim. We received almost 400,000 new immigrants, Olim, in a matter of almost 3 years. It's unheard of in any part of the world. In any part of the world. It's an increase of almost 10% of Jews, and must find works for them, proper jobs and housing. But you have to make such a policy that will give you resources for these purposes and not others such as settlements, etc. I think we are progressing, and I'm very optimistic about the future. I wish Jews will come to Israel not only from oppressed countries, but also from developed countries such as the United States, the world. Tens of thousands of Jews came from America to Israel. Those who think that the only way to guard the Judaism of their children is to be in Israel. For many parts of the Jews, of the Jewish people, disappeared because of pogroms and persecution. Now, Baruch Hashem, no pogrom persecutions, but parts of the Jewish people are disappearing because we are being drowned in chocolate and cream. The world has opened its doors, so the Jews enter and go. Too much assimilation, too many mixed marriages, and not enough education, either for the children or the parents. And if you ask, what are you to stick to their Jewish identity? How can you stick to something that you ignore if they don't know what it is? What are we doing to our children? We want them to continue, but we must give them the instruments and give them the basis for that. You know, Einstein once said, "What a pity that I was born a Jew, because otherwise I would have chosen to be one." And those who born but he knew why he said it. He knew what Judaism is, the depth of Judaism, the Torah, the Chokhmah, the Talmud, all the wisdom of our forefathers, 2,000 years or more. Many of us don't know it. Don't know it. I allow myself to speak to you very frankly. Even Sephardim, when they speak about the heritage, they say, "Oh, Rambam, Maimonides, Yehuda Levi." Okay, we know the names, but how many of us really read them? How many read them? We even are called the people of the book, Am Sefer. How many of us have read that book? How many? I've seen many Goyim who know the Bible better than many Jews. And this is the book, it is our charter on our land. It tells us who we are, where we came from, what we should be, and if we don't know where we come from, how do we know where we're going to? We must take ourselves in our hands, gentlemen, because we are living every day a day comes and the day goes, and you have business and cars and money and housing and this and the Brit Milah and Chosene, Hatorah. Okay, Mazal Tov, Oker Tov. But we should think a little bit further. What is the future of our children and grandchildren? And who gave us the authority to cut the chain that our forefathers gave to us? The torch should be given again and again to children and grandchildren, and I hope this will be done until you come to Israel. This was not on the program, but I said it. Now, gentlemen, 500 years ago, 3 major events took place. One changed the map of Spain. The other changed the map of the Jewish world. And the third, the map of the entire world. The first event was when the Christians of Spain put an end to the Arab rule in Spain. The Arabs who came to Spain invaded Spain in the year 711, and remained there almost 800 years. There were always battles and wars. Usually the Muslims were in the south, the Christians in the north, they coming and going and moving, and the Jews there in the middle. So that was a great victory for the Christians. Fernando and Isabel, the king and queen, as they are called, los Reyes Católicos, they put an end to that Muslim rule. All the bells of the churches in all Europe, that was a great festival for them. They saw that the hand of God that helped the Christians against the Muslims. That was in January. In March, they signed the edict of expulsion of the Jews. This changed the map of the Jewish world, and I'll explain why. And thirdly, 2 days after the Jews finished leaving Spain, Columbus sailed on his boats and discovered America. Niña Pinta y Santa Maria, the 3 boats. So Spain, I was there a few years ago as Minister of Education and Culture, and I signed a treaty of culture with the Spanish government. And I had a chance of speaking with the ministers and also with His Majesty, the King Juan Carlos. And what I found was that Spain was preparing huge festivals to celebrate the discovery of America. Columbus, el encuentro de los pueblos, Colón, el descubrimiento de América, del continente, all American, Latin American countries are all festivales. I said to the ministers, and then I had a meeting with the king, I said, Your Majesty, that year, 500 years ago, was not only the discovery of America. Something else happened here in Spain. In your book of history, there are golden pages, bright pages, but there are also dark, black pages. And you cannot select these pages or others. And what happened to the Jews here was one of the darkest pages in the history of humanity. And I quoted what Ben Gurion used to say, God can do everything. Almighty God. But there is one thing that even He, the Almighty, cannot do, which is to change the past. Even God cannot change. So you cannot change that past. And you have to face it. And speak about it and show it. No use trying to hide it. Both he and the ministers with whom I spoke said that they think that this concept was correct. He even said that we consider the la historia judía en España, parte integral de la historia de España. The history of the Jews in Spain is an integral part of the history of Spain. And yes, we're going to do projects, etc., that will reveal and express the contribution of Jews to culture, to everything, the history, the great achievements, the sufferings, the Inquisition, the expulsion, etc. And I must say that they are trying. They formed a museum in Toledo, in the synagogue, El Tránsito. They made many symposiums, many congresses, books, letters, pamphlets, lot of publications and meetings. They're trying as they can. And lately, President Herzog was in Madrid, as you have seen on television, and he met the king. There was a ceremony, and the king said relevant phrases about this happening. The gist of it being, we assume responsibility for the past, asumimos responsabilidad por el pasado, lo positivo y lo negativo, the positive and the negative part of it. And all Spain is open to all of you, to welcome you with all its heart, etc. Now, I'll ask you, and I'll ask myself, although we are now going to Selechot, to Yom Kippurim, and Sukkot, but I'm going to ask you something from Pesach. Ma nishtana? In what is this expulsion different from all expulsions? Why should we commemorate it? Was there a country that did not expel the Jews? I want to know. Which one? England expelled the Jews in 1290. France, 1306 and onwards, in Wales, expelled the Jews. Germany expelled, that country expelled. They expelled Jews. Why this one? Why don't we commemorate the expulsion of Jews from Great Britain or from France? The answer is that in order to understand that, we should go back a little bit and know what was that Jewish community of Spain. In short, it was the largest community in the entire world, the strongest economically, politically, financially, culturally. In all fields, this was the center of the entire Jewish world. How many Jews were there in the world? 1.5 million, 1.6 million, some say. And in Spain lived 500,000 to 600,000. Almost a third. Almost every third Jew lived in Spain. So when they were expelled, or the pogroms before that, it was an earthquake in the entire world. Dr. Assis, Hebrew University, says it is as if today, Chas v'shalom, God forbid, that the American government says to all Jews, either you convert or get out of America in 3 months, without money, without Jewish, without anything, without any belongings. That would have been an earthquake. That was the Jewish, as if it were the United States of America. The only difference is that today there is Medinat Israel. And then there was not Medinat Israel, there was not a place where Jews could go freely. So this was the center of the Jewish world. The Jews who were expelled from England were some 4,000. Now, for us, every Jew is dear to us, and we love him, etc. But, I mean, the mass of people and its cultural influence. At that time, in Poland, just for an example, lived 25,000 Jews. That great Poland, which later became the real center of the Ashkenazi Jews. But at that time there were 25,000. How come Spain became the center of the Jewish world? Why? How? We owe it to one man, Hasdai ibn Shaprut, of the 10th century. He was the viceroy, or let us say he was the minister of the Arab ruler, Muslim ruler, Abdul Rahman III, and he was responsible for the foreign commerce of Spain. He was in contact with different countries, correspondence, ships that come and go, merchandise. He was the man, and he was a learned man, Tamil Chacham. The Arab ruler, who was very rich, very liberal, very open-minded, made of the capital Cordova the largest city in the world. He sent and bought manuscripts from the entire Arab world. And let us remember that at that time, Europe was in the darkness. England, France, Italy, Germany, all these countries were in the darkness of the Middle Ages. And the center of civilization was in the Arab world. Mathematics, physics, astronomy, medicine, astrology, in all fields, philosophy. Greek philosophy was known to Europe by the Arabs, by the translation from the Arabic. So he sent and bought manuscripts from all parts of the Arab world and invited scholars, learned people to come to Spain. And he gave them money and housing and whatnot. And so Spain became a cultural center for the Arabs. What he did for the Arabs, Hasdai ben Shaprut did for the Jews. He sent letters, he sent people with money to buy manuscripts. He brought Chachamim, Talmidei Chachamim, Rabbanim, scholars, learned people to Spain. And slowly it was known in the entire East, Middle East, and South Africa, North Africa, that if you want to learn, you go to Spain. You want to teach, you go to Spain. You want anything, this is the center. And so developed more and more and more. That is the golden era of Spain, of the Jews in Spain. And there were creations there. The grammar of the Hebrew language was laid down in Spain. There were no rules of grammar of Hebrew, only in Spain it was known. The greatest books of halakha, of Jewish law, were written by Jews from Spain. Halachot Glot of Rabbi Yitzhak Alfasi, Harif. ארבעה טורים, הראש, לטולדו, מה? אני רוצה לדבר על ספרי ההלכה הגדולים, הארבעה האלה. And he, although he was a rabbi from Germany, but was a rabbi in Toledo, and that was the basis for the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch by Rabbi Yosef Karo, who was born in Cordova, but he wrote it in Tzfat. It was accepted by the entire Jewish world, also by the Ashkenazim. The major books, and Harambam, Mishneh Torah Harambam, who started it in Cordova, he fled later to North Africa, wrote it in Egypt, but the spirit is Sephardi. And the book of books of the Kabbalah, according to historians who studied it, was written as Zohar. We know what is the tradition about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. I will not enter into this polemics. According to those who studied it, it was written by Rabbi Moshe de Leon in Avila, in Spain. The greatest books on Jewish law. That's it. And they were spread throughout the Jewish world. So if that center is shattered, the entire world knows about it. The expulsion of the Jews from Spain was not the greatest tragedy according to my view, but what happened there 100 years before that. What they called Chachamim Gzerot Kana, 1391, 101 years before the expulsion, when the Jews were at the top, at the peak of their achievements. They started the pogrom, which started in Sevilla, and then it went throughout Spain like a fire in a dry field. It is calculated that a third of the Jews were massacred. Of the 600 or so thousand, almost 200,000 were murdered. Another figure more or less the same, we don't have exact figures, but it is estimated. Another 200,000 were converted by force to Christianity, and the third was left like that until 100 years later was expelled too. They reached the peak at the end of the 14th century, and since then started not only these physical pogroms and assassinations, but also there was an ideological challenge by the Christians. You see, the Arabs formed for the Christians a military threat. Military threat is dangerous, but it doesn't hurt the soul, it's a neshama. But when it is a matter of faith, religion, ideology, there, what will you put against that? A tank, a horse, a spear, what? What is their defense? And the Christians wanted all that time to prove to the Jews that Christianity was the true faith, la Santa Fe Católica Romana, nuestra madre. And the Jewish faith is la vieja, the old faith. And the true children of Israel, los hijos de Israel, Bnei Israel, are we, the Christians. We are the chosen people of God, not you. Look at yourself, how miserable you are. Is this the chosen people of God? Look at yourself. So the Jews formed a threat to what they believed, and they wanted to show that the real problem was to prove that Jesus was the Mashiach. And the Jew says, no, we have our tradition, what is the Mashiach and when he will come. And there are simanim, there are signs of Yemot HaMashiach. There will be peace in the world, Jerusalem will be built, all exiles will be going back to Eretz Israel. We don't see all these things. There are persecutions, there are wars, there's not peace, no justice. How can you call it Mashiach? But they were not satisfied only with theoretical discussions. They sent people to synagogues. In the middle of the prayer, they would enter, especially one, Vicente Ferrer. 2 weeks ago we had Machotem Hayat Zecher Amalek. This was a sort of Amalek who would go with groups, enter synagogues, interfere in the middle, and start to preach to the Jews to convert. And they would bring with him people with sticks, with things that they would ruin, and they would threaten, they would beat. And they would have public polemics. The first one that we know about that was important was with Haramban Nachmanides, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, in Barcelona, 1263. It was with the king in Barcelona and the Franciscan and Dominican priest. And unfortunately, there are always some Jew who converted to Christianity, and he is the worst of the enemies. In that case, it was Pablo Cristiani. There were others later. Your destroyers come from within you, it says. One of the interpretations is this. So those polemics lasted only a week or so, and according to Jewish sources, Ramban knew what to answer, and it was okay. But we know later that the Christians don't think so, and the king got a letter from the Pope to kill this Ramban, so he fled from Barcelona, he went to Jerusalem. He is considered the father of the resettlement of Jerusalem. But the worst contest, ideological contest, was at the beginning of the 15th century, 1412, 13, 14, in Tortosa, south of Barcelona. At that time, the Christian church was divided. You had two popes, one was in Rome, the other was in Avignon, and he came to this place, Tortosa. Pedro Luna, or Papa Luna they called him, and he agreed to what the priest wanted from him, and he invited some 14 rabbis of communities all around Barcelona and Tortosa, and they had to face the Christian bishops and archbishops. And there is a description of one of the rabbis. He said that we entered, we saw almost 1,000 people sitting there in golden gowns and golden chairs, and there was the Pope. Our heart melted, became like water. 14 rabbis confronting 1,000 bishops and archbishops. And that debate continued for 2 years. They destroy them spiritually. And every time leakage to the communities, you know, your rabbi didn't know what to answer, and there are contradictions, etc., and conversion. And it was all the time an effort of the church to convert. Not only that physical persecution, but also ideological, to eradicate Judaism. Later they formed the Inquisition against those who converted, but they kept in secret the laws, some of the laws. Ner Shabbat, didn't eat pork, they would be brought to trial. If you change your underwear on Friday, that means that you are a Jew, you are brought to trial, you are punished because of that. Some were even put to stake, were burnt alive because they lit a candle for Leil Shabbat. Thousands of Jews were burned alive because they kept their Judaism. And when I remember this, and when I compare what's happening in the world today, when there is no persecution, no inquisition, and you are free to be Jew, and you're free to lit a candle and 10 candles. See what's happening. Now I would like to say that, well, it ended with the expulsion of the Jews. It was a great influence of the church, Torquemada and others. The queen was very Catholic, and Torquemada, the chief inquisitor, was her confessor. She confessed to him everything she thought, etc. He had great influence on her. And we had Jews who tried to avoid that expulsion, didn't work, like Yitzhak Abarbanel, Abraham Senior, who later also converted. So it was a tragedy inside. But there were 200,000 Jews who preferred to leave Spain and not to convert. What we should stress here is not the fact that they expelled us. No. Okay, that's cruelty. But the fact that 200,000 that remained alive refused to convert and be traitors to their tradition and to their religion. And they went. God knows they wouldn't know where to. Most of them went across the border to Portugal. Later it was worse in Portugal than in Spain. Others went on board ships. Some went to Italy, some crossed the frontier to France, most of them went to Morocco, North Africa. Later, when it was possible, they went to the Ottoman Empire, to the Turkish Empire, wherever it was possible. They suffered a lot, even that they paid the price for not accepting to abandon the Jewish faith. And they found, I must tell you, they found courage and force to re-establish communities in the entire Jewish world, wherever they were expelled. They could have despaired totally, but they did not. That spiritual force is something that we have to admire. Now, if I would ask, by the way, there's a story written by a certain Ibn Verga that a ship was broken and a Jewish family was somehow floated and arrived at the shore of Fas, Morocco. So it was the father and his two children, his wife. They started walking, very tired, and the sun was burning over their head. His wife died, he buried her, then one child, and another child, he buried them all, and they continued walking towards the desert. And then he raised his eyes towards heaven and he said, "Oh God, you are really trying to make me disbelieve in you, or not to believe in you. הרבה אתה משתדל שלא אאמין בך. You are trying that I will not believe in you. It won't help you. Whatever you do, I swear in your name and all the angels of heaven, that whatever you will do, I'll continue to believe in you." Now, another chapter. Was there anything special about that jury? Are there any characteristics that we can point out that made them differ from other communities in other parts of the world? I would point out three main characteristics, typical of the Sephardim. One is the integration of faith and science. No contradiction. You can be a rabbi and you can be a philosopher. If you are a true believer, don't worry. You can be, Rabbi Yehuda Levi was a poet, but he was a physician. And he was a philosopher at the same time. Avraham ibn Ezra was interpreter of parts of the Chumash. He was also an astronomer. He was an astronomer of international fame. On the moon there is a crater bearing his name, crater Ibn Ezra. There are three craters on the moon: Ibn Ezra, Ralbag, Rabbi Levi ben Gershon, and there is a third one of Rabbi Abraham Zakut. They were so famous in astronomy that the Geographical Society put the names on three craters of the moon. If I take an example, very unique example of Rabbi Shmuel Nagid, he was, I will use modern terms, in Granada. He worked for the Sultan of Granada. He was Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Foreign Minister, Defense Minister, and Chief of Staff at the same time, and he was a rabbi. Rabbi Shmuel Nagid, every year he would go to war at the head of the Arab forces against their enemies. Some 18 years, some say he lost one eye, he was taken almost prisoner, his horse drowned in the river, and he kept on fighting. He kept diaries after every battle. He wrote a diary in Hebrew, in verse, poetry, beautiful Hebrew. And this diary, after every battle, he would send to his son, Yosef, who was in Granada. How do you send a letter from the battlefield? There were no fax those days, or telephones, or cables. You send by a horse, yes, it takes time. So, what do you do? No? How do you, Good, Rabbi. You send. You write the letter, you tie it to the other pigeon, and the pigeon flies. What happens if a hawk devours the pigeon? Send another one. So you send two pigeons with the same verses. That's what he writes. שלח יונה מבשרת, ואם היא לא מספרת, את כנפיה מחוברת, ומחרקו מעודרת, etc. ולמען אם פגשה נץ, שני אותה באחרת. And if it will be taken by a hawk, send another one. And it will go to Joseph in his hand, and he will send a copy of this letter to the communities of Egypt, Eretz Israel, Syria, of all countries, to tell of his great victory. And this Rabbi Shmuel Nagid wrote some 2,000 poems in Hebrew, beautiful Hebrew. And he was a rabbi, and he wrote about the rules of the Talmud. No contradiction, This is typical of Sephardim Jews. You can be a statesman, a diplomat, a consul, whatever, at the same time, a religious man, a faithful man, a man who believes and a believer. Not only that Rambam, Maimonides even say that if you go out and you see the universe and the stars and heaven and this, you start thinking, who created all this? Yesh manhig laviral. Not only that you do not, I don't know, you run away from religion, you start to believe in the Creator. So that's first. Secondly, and I'll make it short because I see the watch, and I was warned before that not to make a too long a speech, because the Rodesvise Turcano si cansa muy piscin. En más cuando ya se comieron unas boliquitas, la tripa se les hinchó, quieren dormir. All right. The second characteristic is moderation. No extremism. No extremism. Tolerance, open windows, open minds. And because religion was not extremist, there was not a movement anti-religious. I grew in Jerusalem in a Sephardi quarter, Oel Moshe. All of us were Sephardim. We spoke only Judaism, Spanish, except Hebrew that we knew from school and the Tefillot, but that was the language. And not only we hate religion, but we liked it. The traditions we like, Sephardim, are not anti-religious, but they are moderate. And they don't know of conservatism and reformism and constructionism, all these maises as they in Yiddish, do not exist amongst Sephardim. There is a religion, they respect tradition, Baruch Hashem, and that's it. There is frankly some tendency in Israel with some so-called Sephardim who are becoming so extremist that I have discussions with them. One of them, a member of Knesset, said, I am descendant of the conversos of Sepharad. I said, maybe biologically, yes. Spiritually, that's not true because you don't know what is the spirit of Sepharad. You are so extremist, my God. And when religion becomes extremist, it causes reaction. When it is tolerant, humanistic understanding, you will find that all respect religion and like it. So that's moderation. Ashvila Imtsai, Bet Hillel, not Bet Shammai. No es para amargar la vida. las המצוות והחוקים זה לא בשביל למרר את החיים. Not to what? Don't bitter your life. No, it's way of life. There are mitzvot, there are commandments, respect them, achieve them. But when there is effect, if you can make it harder or a little bit easier, you make it a little bit easier. עץ חיים היא למחזיקים בה ותומכיה מאושר, דרכיה דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיה שלום. The third one, and the last that I mentioned, is what was with them was national and pride and pride in the Bible, in the Hebrew language, in their heritage. I must tell you, I sometimes surprised to see how they reacted. They were especially in the south, in the Arab kingdom of Andalusia in the south. As I said, the Arabs were at the top of their culture, and the Jews said, anything you can do, I can do better. What they can do in Arabic, I do in Hebrew, and better. They write poetry, I write poetry, and better one. They write philosophy, we'll do philosophy. They deal with grammar and the dictionaries, we'll do that, and better. Not only this, that Rabbi Shmuel Nagid had the guts to start to criticize the Quran and Islam there in Granada under the kingdom of the Sultan. It was what they did, they say chutzpah, in Hebrew chutzpah, a little bit too much. I found in the archives of the Kingdom of Aragon, there was a Minister of Finance, Astrug Rebalia. So he gives an order written in Spanish by the state to sell this land to that gentleman, to transaction of things, order of the Ministry of the Treasury. And he signs in Hebrew, Astrug Rebalia. He passed away. After his son became Minister of Finance, Yosef. He signed in Hebrew, Yosef Rebalia. The orders of the state, written in Spanish, he signs in Hebrew. Rabbi Avraham Zakut, that astronomer that has the crater on the moon, and some say that Columbus used his maps to find his way in the ocean. He was the astronomer of the King of Portugal, João II, and I saw the document in his boy. The document says, I, João II, ordered to give to my astronomer Avraham Zakut the sum of 300, I can't remember the name of the money there, and with a seal, red seal, etc. Now, down he should sign a receipt. So he signed, Ani, Avraham Zakut, Hatochem Me'et HaMelech. I, Avraham Zakut, the astronomer of the king, in Hebrew. Otiot Rashi, beautiful handwriting. There was one case of the Inquisition that they caught a shoemaker, a Jewish shoemaker. What was his name? I'll try to remember later. And they accused him of being, respecting the Shabbat and not working on Shabbat and not eating pork, etc. So he brought to trial and he had to confess. And so they gave him his confession in writing to be signed. He took the confession and he signed in Hebrew. So let's learn Hebrew. And let us be proud of our heritage, but you cannot be proud of something that you don't know. That's what we have to know. To know. And I tell you, I've never heard one single problem, one single question of modern philosophers that I didn't see and heard and read, that our forefathers already asked that question and gave different answers. Sometimes better, wiser than these ones that we're given today. And to know what Judaism is, what it's all about. For this one should learn, one should read, because if you want to continue, we have to know what are we going to give to our children and grandchildren. Lastly, there is a writer in Hebrew, in Israel, who wrote a book about Jerusalem, Yemenites, and he gives a description of each community. The Ashkenazim, he doesn't give them many compliments on their habits and behaviors. The Kurdistani, the Bukhari, each one, 2-3 phrases, very, I must say, descriptive of them. Then he takes about the Sephardim. That's the Spanish-speaking, Ladino-speaking Judaism. Nosotros, say they are Ba'ale Ga'ava. Como dicen los búlgaros, gavientos de los chuk. Los gavientos. They go around with pride. Pride of what? For what their forefathers did. And they remind me of those sons who inherit a fortune from their fathers and forefathers, and all the time they draw from the bank, from that account, and they do not add to that account. It's time that we add to that account. It's fine to be sad. Yehuda Levi, Rambam, forefathers, Sephardim, okay. No? What else? What later? What now? Where's our contribution? Now. We cannot rely only on the past. We cannot. We have to learn it, study it, and take courage and inspiration for doing and contributing. And I'm afraid to say that in many cases, by the way, Sephardim and Ashkenazim don't make the same mistake. They concentrate all culture in burriquitas y trabados, landricas, pajuelos, and the gefilte fish and latkes and maices. there is something deeper than that. Deeper. It's nice. I like it. Listen, my wife will tell you how much I like these things. But those spiritual contributions and parts, they are the most important things, and we should learn and know them. What will be in the future? I guess that a time will come that we will not be hearing much about the differences of the different communities in Israel. I give you something I know. It's the marriages, there's no intermarriage with going there, almost nothing, 0.003. But with the Jews, Ashkenazim and Sephardim or Edot Mizrach, Orientals, it was 10 years ago it was 13%, now it's almost 27%, going to 30%. That's to say, the mix, the intermarriage, they have children and grandchildren, so what are they? In 40 years' time, 50 years' time, nobody will know. And I'm afraid Ladino will be forgotten. It will be remembered by songs, books and studies, but everyday life. Para hablar el judaísmo español necesita que hables de la mortaja, de la falla hasta la mortaja. You have to speak the language from the birth until the death. That's not what's happening. There are no ghettos now, finished. And outside of Israel, too, the children know less and the grandchildren know less of Yiddish or Ladino, and they will, what I hope is that they will remain good Jews, and that's what will happen. I say, if I look back to the history of Spain, the Jews in Spain, it is in order to learn the greatness of our forefathers. And I think that what was created in Spain does not belong only to Sephardim. And I warned my compatriots Sephardim, don't let us not make of a Rambam a professional Sephardi, because the Ashkenazim will take Einstein and welcome Ashkenazi. What we'll do? And don't make of Yehuda Levi only a professional Sephardi. They will take Bialik and make him a professional Ashkenazi. I don't want this. The spirit does not know boundaries. And something that was written in Poland can be sacred in Morocco and vice versa. Something written in Spain can be very holy in Lithuania and the other parts. The spirit has no frontiers. So what was created in Spain, just as what was created in Poland and other parts, is part of the national treasury that we all have to know and respect. When I see the tragedies and the bravery of the Jews of Spain, I'm reminded of a poet who wrote, anonymous poet who wrote in Spain, 16th century, I have to die singing because I was born crying. Not all the agonies of the world are for me. Tengo que morir cantando, ya que llorando nací, que las penas de este mundo no todas son para mí. Thank you.
See that? For us now, I hope that we can take a lesson of Mr. Yitzhak Navon with us, and thank you very much again. Wonderful. That was yes. אברך את אדוני בכל עת, תמיד תהילתו בפי סודה, כל ישמע את האלים תודה שמו כי זה כל האדם. תהילת אדוני בפיו יברך כל הצד שמות שלום המעט, ואנחנו נחיה מעתה ועד עולם. הללויה. רגלי עמדה במישור מקום ורחמנו מדבר על השולחן שנפנה אדוני. נברך אלוהינו שאכלנו משלו. ברוך אלוהינו שאכלנו משלו, טוב הגדול תמיד חיינו. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, חזן את העולם כולו בטובו וכן בחסד וברחמים, ונותן לחם לכל בשר, כי לעולם חזו, טובו הגדול תמיד, לא חסר לנו, ואל יחסר לנו, מזון תמיד, לעולם ועד, כי הוא אלזן, ופנס לכל, ושולחנו ערוך לכל, כי מחיה ומזון לכל בריאותיו, אשר ברא ברחמיו, ולא בחסדיו כאמור. פותח את ידיך ומצביע לכל חי רצון, ברוך אתה אדוני, אדן ברחמיו. את הכל נודה לך אדוני אלוהינו שהנחלת לנו וזכותך רחבה, ברית עזרה חיים ומזון על שהוצאתנו מארץ מצרים והודיעתנו מבית עבדים, ועל בריתך שחתמת בבשרנו, ועל תורתך אשר לימדתנו, ועל חוקי רצונך שהודעתנו, ועל חיים ומזון שעתזנו ופרנס אותנו, על הכל אדוני אנחנו נמלא ומברך עם נשימה כאמור ואכלת ושבעת הוראת אדוני לך שטובה שנת עליו. ברוך אתה אדוני על הארץ ועל המזון, רחם אדוני אלוהינו עלינו יתרחם, ועל ישי מלך ועל תימתם כעוליו, עליך לך ומנך בדרך בית הקדוש שנקרא שמך עליו. אבינו ראינו זוננו ונזנו, כלכלנו הרוויחנו, הרווח לנו, מהרה מכל צרותינו, ואל תזיחנו אדוני אלוהינו, מתנות בשר ואדם, ולא לידי הלוואתם, שמתנתם מעוטה וחרפתם מרובה, אלא לידך המלאה, הרחבה עשירה, והפתוחה יהי רצון, שלא נבוש בעולם הזה, ולא נקלם לעולם הבא, ומלכות דוד משיחה, כך תרנה למקומה, במהרה בימינו, דברי שם הקודם במהרה בימינו לעולת אדוני. ונברח מבים שם הקודש אמן, מורת אדוני וחלם לעד האל, אבינו מלכנו, עתירנו בורנו, פועלנו קדושנו, ראש יעקב רואינו, רואי ישראל המלך הטוב, והמדיב לכל שבכל היום, הוא מטיב לנו, יטיב לנו, הוא גמלנו, הוא גומלנו, הוא ימלנו לך, תן וחסד ורחמים, ראו יצלה וכל טוב, הרחמן הוא ישתבח, על כיסא כבודו, הרחמן הוא ישתבח, בשמיים ובארץ, הרחמן הוא ישתבח, בנו לדודורים, הרחמן הוא קרב, לעמו ירם, כבר פרנו לצטרם המון, ועצנו חבול איזוי בית רב איסור, בנחת ולא בצער ורב וצמצום המון ניתן שלומנו, הרחמן הוא ישלח, ורחם רוח תרבות הרחמן יזיע, הרחמן ישבור לגלות מלם צורנו, הרחמן יוכל לנו במידת הרחמן יפעל נפש של מלכת משפט הגוף, הרחמן יפתח לנו את ידו הרחבה רחמנו על כל אחד ואחד ממנו, והגדול גמור שברכו אותנו כדי שבעת תורים, אברהם צבא כבוד ויעקב עקום לכל כל, כן יברך אותנו יחד על שמאפשרים את תורנו מלמד, הרחמן יפרוץ עלינו זוקה שלמה, הרחמן ייתת רותו ואהבתו לבן דירתו כל נתנתה, מנו יחיים וזכנו גם למשיח, ולבניין בית המקדש וחיי העולם הבא, מגדיל ישועות מלכו ויוצר חסד למשיחו, דוד וזרעו אדוני, כפירים רשו ורעבו, ודורשי אדוני לא יחסרו כל טוב. נער הייתי גם תחנתי ולא ראיתי צדים את אדוני בשלכם, כל היום חלמו ידרכו מה שאכלנו סבו מה שדין ופעם מה שאדוני ברכה, כדכתיב ויתן לפני ויחל ודרתי באדוני, ולא שמעתם לאדוני ששמיים בארץ, וגבר שירת אדוני, והיה אדוני דאון אדם ויתן אדוני ברכתם ובשלום, כי פי הנפש שוקקה ונפש רבע, מלטוב הודו לאדוני כי טוב, כי לעולם חסדו, הודו לאדוני כי טוב, כי לעולם חסדו, השמיים שמיים לאדוני, והארץ נתן לבני אדם, עושה שלום בברומיו וברחמיו, יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ואמרו אמן. יעקב ממוסי ובימו, מיד סנטו ברוך הוא, וברוך שמו בנדישימו, כמו דיו מוזרה, אמפרה קומר, פניו פרה בסיף, muchos y buenos para vivir. El Padre el grande que mande al chico, a según tenemos de menester para nuestras casas y para nuestros hijos. Dios nos oiga y nos apiade, y nos apiade por su nombre el grande, que somos salvitas sin pecado. Nodulado naikito, kile olam hazo, nodulado naikito, kile olam hazo. Siempre mejor, nunca peor, nunca más que la mesa del Creador. Amén.
I'd like to take the opportunity now to thank you all for coming tonight. This does conclude our program, and I hope you all had a great time. I personally had a great time. I hope we can continue to do many more events like this for the two Caleb, and always for good occasions. Thank you very much. Good night.